cámara, que no se trabe y ande y todo perfecto. Sí, ya está grabando. So I started to record and
So no more swears, right?
So we're all set up. We're gonna open the room and start.
I'm good. I'm ready.
Okay. Okay, so welcome all. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Monica Muñoz, Marketing Professor for the Arts at Los Andes University and Project Manager. Today, I will be moderating this panel, and this actually is our first webinar that was born as a result of the Cartagena Congress we were going to hold this summer, but due to COVID-19, we had to cancel. So we rethink the idea, and we would open these digital spaces to share with international and national experts and arts managers and academics behind different issues that are facing the arts and cultural sector in these difficult times. So the hosts of today are Los Andes University and the Master of Management in International Arts Management, which I can gladly say we are all alumni from the same program. And Professor Francois Colbert is joining us today. So it's an honor to be in this panel, really. So hope to do our best so that you feel very proud of us. And the purpose is to be able to talk how all this new digital reality we need to face in the moment, how we keep on going with arts organizations, that it has become really clear that although it's very difficult for us and more in the Latin American context, arts and culture has become very important for our well-being and to keep us sane as home. So we need to keep on going to find collaborative ideas to keep on going with this. So now I'm going to start to present our panelists. So our first panelist is Charles. He is an executive director of Theater 3 since July 2019 and has worked professionally in the North Texas arts and culture sector for the last decade. While working for one of the neighborhood cultural centers, he found it necessary to be more impactful, which inspired him to investigate graduate work on arts management. Therefore, before joining the Theater 3, he completed the MIAM program and it's a partnership within 4 universities. Through this program, Charles gained valuable skills and insight to how arts and culture are managed and produced worldwide. He brings a global and transcultural perspective to Theater 3, along with a robust network of artists, academics, and managers, both locally and internationally. So welcome, Charles. Thank you for accepting the invitation.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, now Robert. He is the acting general manager for the Greater Middletown Chorale, and he's in the exciting position leading the company to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic while simultaneously creating a new program with the executive director. His primary focus is business strategy and entrepreneurship for cultural organizations. Most recently, he has been increasing his involvement in the domain of digital technologies, including data science and intelligent artificial, looking at how they interact with cultural organizations. Robert is a highly inquisitive person, always trying to expand his mind through reading, exploring, and new projects. So welcome, Robert.
Thank you for having me.
And the last guest today is Virginie Lacombe. She has a master's degree in international arts management. She is now the artistic director of MIFO, a community and cultural center dedicated to offer service to the Francophone minority living in Eastern Ontario. She is responsible for the management of two artistic programs, the Music School and the Desjardins Film Festival. Before working at MIFO, she worked as an artistic event coordinator for the city of Montreal and as a customer care and database coordinator for Boudon. So welcome, Virginie.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so now to begin, I just want to get a little bit of context of your organizations and what have been the major challenges you have been facing due to these difficult times. So if anyone wants to begin.
Sure, I'll begin.
Okay.
So, hi everyone. My name is Robert. If you can have seen, I started very recently at the Greater Middletown Chorale. In fact, it was only February of this year, about a month before all this pandemic hit. And to be honest with you, it wasn't on my radar. I knew about it in a context of far away, but then quickly, of course, came to our shores. So a little context of the Chorale, who we are. So we're a smaller community-based chorus, and the chorus itself is rather mid to large size, and we're composed of amateur singers, so community members. And our works that we perform are both masterworks, new works, and combinations of different classical musical works. This is complemented by a professional choir that's under our umbrella as well, called Alchemy. And further than that, we are located in a very culturally rich, so where is Connecticut? It's a good question. It's really right between New York and Boston, if you know the United States. And in that area is a lot of small cities that are very culturally rich and artistically mature. So a lot, not only are our audiences pulled from that, but also our membership, our singers also are very much in that culturally rich environment. And further to that, our administrative structure is a working board because of the size of the organization. The board itself performs most of the administrative tasks. And so there are some paid members of the administrative group, and they work together with the board to administer and constantly professionalize the organization. So Monica, would you like me to go and talk a little bit about the challenges so far in a response, or let the other two introduce their organizations?
Okay, if you want Charles to introduce the organization, and then we can start going with the challenge and new projects in your amazing organizations. So Charles.
So Theater 3 is a mid-sized regional professional theater company. So we are the first union house in North Texas. We're located in Dallas. Our metropolitan area, fun fact, is roughly the size of the entire state of Connecticut. It's quite vast and kind of disparate. Texas is very odd. We have a very rich sense of culture and cultural pride and artistic pride, but we also don't have the longevity and the history of arts participation that is so common on the eastern shore of the United States. So in some ways, we're not as mature. So Theater 3 was the third professional theater company in Dallas after the start of the regional theater movement in the United States. So post-vaudeville, post-Broadway, when theater started being made in other parts of the country, it started in Dallas by a very powerful female named Margot Jones. And our founder, Norma Young, started her theater company 2 or 3 years after Margot passed away and her theater company closed. So we have this rich history of doing very diverse and interesting work for Dallas, and we've been doing so for about 60 years.
As a mid-sized organization, we have a lot of interesting challenges because our mission has never been to be a gigantic production house that with a several $million budget. We're a part of our community, and it's very much about our local pride. And one of our largest kind of vision statement is probably the best way to put it, is that we want to be locally impactful but nationally significant. So we work really hard to recruit artistic and executive professionals and board members that have that regional and national reach, but also all of our work is very much focused on how we can engage the Dallas community and watch it grow into a more international city.
Okay, thank you. I forgot to say to the audience, thank you we saw people from everywhere around the world, so very welcome all of you. And if you want to do some questions in the last 15 minutes of the panel, we would open the chat for you to ask for them some questions. So to continue, Virginie, how is your organization? Give us a little bit of context about yours.
Yeah, so I work at MIFO. MIFO is a community center that offers services in French for the French minority in Ontario. So for those who don't know, in Canada, we have two main languages, French and English. And the region I'm in Ontario, it's mostly Anglophone. And so my job is to offer services in French to the Francophone minority. So the community center, it's a little bit bigger than the two other organizations that Robert and Charlie are talking about. We're 350 employees, roughly. And we have a lot of different programs. So we have artistic programs that I work for and manages, but we have also other programs that are not related to artistic, but more to the community side. So we have daycares, we have camps, like summer camps for kids. We have activities for retired people like Zumba classes and so on. And so every time we make a decision, it's not just for the artistic department, it's for the entire company. And so we have in the artistic team, we're roughly 20 employees and 4 in the management team. And apart from that, like the programs departments, we also have a finance department, fundraising, marketing, and so on that work for all the programs and not just like, let's say, for the artistic programming.
And what have been the major challenges faced by your organization due to this crisis?
Well, I would say there's a couple of things, definitely, not just one challenge. One that has proven very challenging is the fact that we have to find a decision that would fit at the same time the music school, at the same time the film festival, and at the same time the daycare and the summer camp and all of that. And so when we make a decision, it always has to be planned with every actors within the organization. And also another thing that I think is very interesting is communication overall. The way you communicate at the same time with people within your organization, your employees, or if you have independent contractors, as we do, the artists, but also your clients. How do you explain to them that you don't know yet what is going to happen? It's like, but I have tickets for this show, I have tickets for this movie projection. You're like, well, we don't know yet if it's postponed, if it's completely canceled. And so communication is very something that is super important. So with your employees as well, one thing that we have to think about is how you tell 85% of your employees that they don't have a job next week. And so, of course, like I'm at a bigger scale than some other arts organization, but I think we all had to face that question at some point. And so, of course, as I said, communication, everything related to HR and budgeting, because we have no autonomous revenues anymore, but also programming. What do you do with the shows that you had, the movies, the activities? Do you postpone? Do you cancel? And how do you make that decision? So, yeah.
And Charlie, what have been your challenges? I think, yeah, most organizations are facing similar difficulties.
Yeah, I don't know if everyone saw me just nodding constantly to Virginie's. It's very, very similar for Theater 3, even though we're smaller. So when COVID started impacting our region of the United States, we could tell the state of Texas is known for not just cowboys, but really relaxed government. So when the state government started to move, we were like, it's too late. We should have already done something, because that's how relaxed the local government is. So as they started to move, we were having a final performance of one production that we ended up canceling those final shows because we could tell that it was most likely too late and too risky, too dangerous. So we canceled that. We had to postpone rehearsals for our next production immediately, which then set us in motion with a lot of national players. As a union theater, all of a sudden we're part of this national conversation with the union about what happens with this postponed show and what happens if we go digital. What does that mean? Is that this union or is it the other, and it's become this interesting issue that all of a sudden we're one small piece of this very large puzzle as a small organization. And then with that, I oversee a staff of 9 people, myself included. And then we have lots of support staff, lots of independent contractors and part-time professionals. And most of those part-time professionals were immediately laid off. And as most of us around the world are seeing, we're being encouraged to stay at home. And I don't know if you can tell, I unfortunately am not. I'm at the theater. And part of that is that I am the essential accountant now, which was not, it was part of my job, but I was not the accountant. I am the janitor now. I am security. I make sure that the building hasn't been vandalized or broken into every day. It's become a very different reality. And as arts administrators, we're all used to wearing many hats and doing many jobs. But most of the time we have other team members that help support us doing those many jobs. And what's become a supreme challenge for me and for my organization is that I am now full-time doing most of those jobs and also supporting my staff, that I am working very hard to get the support from the government and from local agencies and foundations to keep them employed so that I don't have to pursue any future layoffs. But that's a week by week calculation of who, like, how do I keep cash flow so that I can keep people employed and not contribute to the large unemployment and economic issue locally and internationally.
Yeah, that would bring us to to our next question after Robert. Then it's what are the actions taken in order to keep on going? But Robert, what have been your major challenges in your organization?
So great question. And I thought about this a little bit, and there are really 2 that I've narrowed down. The first one is it's been very tough to predict what is going to happen. We can plan strategies, but the only way to plan a strategy is if you're able to predict. So initially when the virus hit, we as a team, or I should say our director of marketing, who has a lot of experience in risk management, brought to us attention that organizations independently of government were canceling or postponing, and we needed to respond. So really within a week, we ended up implementing a contingency management plan that clearly laid out the strategies needed to take, especially with communication. We found ourselves in a rather fortuitous circumstance that our concert was April 26th. So all this was happening in about March 14th or so. So we were about a month out, and we were able to respond based on that plan. But we said we're postponing the concert. We do plan on, it is still postponed, but I'll tell you a little bit about how our thought process was in making a more firm date. So it has been a constant battle about how to predict, and not only how to predict, but how slowly and quickly those variables are updating themselves. So if I may share, what we ended up doing is scenario planning. So we took our concert and first created 5 potential times that it could be performed. Initially, it was 2 in August, 1 in November, those are 2020, 1 in May 2021, and 1 in November 2021. So the situation gets more dire every time. We've actually updated it most recently to be November 2020, December 2020, January 2021, May 2021, December 2020, January 2021, May, and November 2021. So and we plan a scenario for each one. Each one, as we get closer, as everything gets more clear, we'll decide which ones we should use. So the first scenario was when we realized August would be too close for an interior concert, we decided to stick to a safer bet in the fall. But now, if it does go on, as some people seem to be saying, into January, we're troublesome because we have large audiences in small spaces. So even if we do start opening up early, that's something we have in the government plans for opening are going to be on the latter end of openings. So we, as an organization, in continuing to monitor the situation, have looked at 6 variables. The 6 are daily new admissions of coronavirus, new therapies such as the remdesivir, immunity, contact tracing, a vaccine, and government regulation. So if you see those 6, 5 of whom are medical in nature, what we're trying to do is expand how far out we can plan by monitoring the variables that government is planning. We could go only after government regulation and just look at their timeline, but that if they're reacting to something else, then it's hard for us to predict going out farther. And so our chief tool, so we are also looking at different loans and different ways to keep everyone on, because we're mostly volunteer based in terms of our board and our administration. It is, the payroll is not as hard in our organization to sustain, but it's absolutely a concern because in many ways our income is less and our income from shows is cut off. So budgeting is very important. And one of the tools that we used, we formulated very quickly is to have an 18-month budget. So we have an 18-month budget for the organization that's planned. And I know there can be some hesitancy to create a budget that's not completely finished. And a lot of what I use the budget for, especially in this time, is to use it as a mitigation tool, which means to lessen the effect of or to predict what's coming. And it's really been effective because you'll be surprised, even if you insert zeros for most, you were not doing anything artistic for 9 months, you just enter zeros. And it's actually quite a good tool to be able to at least get, even if it's not accurate, it can be you can use it as a model and start thinking, well, what is 18 months down the line going to be versus like June, which is even still going to be a long time.
So going to our next question, what from your management point of view, what have been these specific new things that you're doing and actions you have taken in order to respond to the crisis? Let's say, Virginie, if we want to start from your perspective, that have 2 different products that are very different. One thing is film, one thing is performing arts, one thing is music. How have you been taking actions in response to the crisis?
Well, the first thing is that I would say that the first 2 weeks, when everything was still unknown in March, well, for us in Canada, it was in March. Those 2 weeks, we were kind of just looking. It was status quo. We're like, so we stopped our program for now. We say they're postponed. We don't know yet, but we say they're postponed because we're hoping at that point, we're hoping we're reopening in 3 weeks from now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the decision we make. And we are lucky to be a bigger organization with more available cash flow. And so we keep our employees for those 2 weeks, even though there's no programs, right? And so that was kind of the first step. And then after that, when we realized we would not be going back to work in 3 weeks, or there would not be any shows or anything of that kind, then of course, we started thinking about it before, but then we started implementing different actions, I would say. And as you said, my programs are so diverse. So I have the music school, and then I have a film festival in November, and then we also have shows, like a performing arts venue. And so all actions are different, but I would say the first thing we told ourselves is to be flexible and to be agile, because we would not be doing the task we're supposed to be doing. And even as individual employees, we would not be doing, like even day to day, like I'm doing now some accounting that I was not doing before, just because it's how it works now. Like you're pitching on everything and you're working on everything with everybody and you're helping, because this time you have a little bit less work to do, and then this time you have a lot of work to do, so you're asking some help from people that would not necessarily have helped on that before. And so that's the one thing, just making it clear in your team that you might not do what you're usually doing, and that's fine, and we're just all pitching in, and that allows you to still have a job too, right? And so like Charlie was saying, like he's doing the janitor job now. Like I don't have that, but it's a little bit like that. Like you're pitching on everything, and you're trying to make it possible to keep as much people employed as possible. And so there's that. And for the programs, well, we thought about multiple things. We thought about having shows online. But for us, it's very difficult because we don't have that much governmental help. And so having shows online, it's a lot of money we put towards that with absolutely no revenues. So that wasn't really possible for us. So for the shows, we just decided to postpone. For the music school, we decided to put together a music school online. And so that allows us to have some cash flow. The amount of the class is different. So it's cheaper for the student to have an online class than it is to have an in-person class at MIFO. And so the fact that it's cheaper, it allows us multiple things. So it allows us to reach more people and to keep our community outreach, because a lot of people have lost their jobs. And so they might not be able to pay the regular price they would have paid for a class. And so that allows us to keep those clients in. And so I would say that's one of the first thing we have in mind, is to try to keep our clients, or at least to try to stay in their minds, even though we're not there. Trying to do things for them, whether it's online or on Facebook, or just keep posting our newsletter, so they still know we're there and we're still kind of offering something. And then for the movie theater, we decided to not put free movies online, but we decided to have a partnership with different distributors that would give links to our clients so that they could go and see, let's say, on Thursday, this movie with this link is available online for free. So it's not just like put out there. There's this kind of time frame and time limit that people, they only have the access for one day, for example. So we're not just putting something for free out there, but it's really this way of keeping our clients interested in the program and in what we do. And also it's a way of, I'm thinking all those people that, either lost their job or they're stuck at home, and it's just a way to keep them entertained and to be a little bit of a smile in their day, that maybe it's not going that well, maybe some family member is not going that well. And at some point they can just relax and say, oh, well, MIFO, they put like an online link to see this movie. Maybe I wouldn't have paid to see that movie, but it's nice that they're thinking about us. And so, yeah, I would say those are like the three main things we did.
Very nice. And Charles, what have been your actions taken? I think you pinpoint the valuable thing of how arts are in these moments of crisis. And Charles, what action have you taken in your organization?
So Theater 3 is very fortunate. Our board of directors actually has kind of let loose some of their oversight into individual actions, and they've allowed me and our artistic director, both of us, some freedom to do what we think is best rather than wait to send it out to committee, because we all know that updates come every 20 minutes sometimes, and information changes. So it's allowed us to be more nimble. I think that's really important for arts organizations right now, is to be flexible and be able to adapt. The first thing that we did, like I said, we had to cancel a few performances and postpone an entire production. And what that has allowed us to do in the meantime, our artistic director is pushed for, if we can't have people in the theater to see plays and musicals, then we're going to flood them with other types of content. So we've leaned into some of our ancillary content. We have a blog and a podcast and a couple other ancillary programs that they used to be monthly things that we would do, and now they've become weekly things that we put out, so that every week there's something to read or something to listen to that is relevant to what we do, but also it keeps our patrons and our community engaged and reminds them that we're here and we're working, and we can't wait to be able to see them again. And also, in this time where we would be doing a production, we have been investigating different technologies to see if there's a way to produce our future productions digitally, which has a lot of complications, not just the technology aspect and is it worthwhile to invest in more technology for programming that is not your typical programming, but also it's provided a lot of interesting issues. So the play that we postponed, we may not be able to get the copyright information, like the copyright to produce it digitally, because the rights to perform the play are different than the movie rights. And if they consider us live streaming a movie, then all of a sudden our very small royalty fee becomes the same royalty fee that Universal Studios or Disney would have to pay. And as a small organization, we can't afford that. So there's a lot of very large conversations and large considerations coming in. And it also comes down to union and our ability to work with our artists that may or may not be union. And it's interesting because we value our union partnerships, but there is Actors Equity Association, which is for stage performers, and then there's the Screen Actors Guild, which is for movie acting performers. And typically they're very separate and they work together, but right now they're not agreeing on how to fix the solution. And an organization like Theater 3 and many other performing arts groups are caught in the middle, which has become a challenge where we most likely will have to, at least for a time, step away from our partnership with these unions and our union performers, not because of anything personal, just because we need to move forward for our own cash flow and for our own organizational survival, and hope that that partnership survives the interim.
Can you build a bit? You name your patrons and your donors and your network that surrounds you. Can you tell us what is the key to keep on building relationships in this moment, and how do you do it with all this community people you're naming?
So it's really interesting. We've had a tremendous outpouring of love and adoration from our patrons and our donors and subscribers, which has actually been really heartfelt and uplifting, because it's scary, and I'm sure it's scary for everyone here, just thinking about our own livelihoods, let alone our organizational livelihood. So to have this support has been really tremendous. And I actually think, as much as this pandemic is a very ugly and dangerous thing, it's reminded us how important our connections with other human beings really are, and that we really are social creatures. And I know that not everyone and every country has a culture of philanthropy or of donorship, but a lot of times people confuse fundraising with begging for money and asking for money. And that's not what fundraising is. It's not what development is. Development is about building resources or building connections. It's about building that relationship over time. And it's about really moving a customer through the customer funnel, that you get someone who attended one time to attend a second time, and to attend multiple times, and then to subscribe, and then to volunteer, and then to donate. Donations are typically the last phase of that, but it takes a constant relationship building with the organization to get them there. And what this pandemic has allowed us to do is it makes a very common phrase that usually is dismissed in conversation a very real question, which is, how are you? Because how are you isn't just, hi, how are you doing today? It's not passive. It really is like, how are you? Are you healthy? Is your family healthy? Have you eaten? It makes it very human whenever I contact a donor, even if it's to say thank you, that like there's this give and take, and it really is a relationship between myself as an artistic administrative professional and them as a patron and community advocate.
Yeah, I think now more than ever, it's important to keep on building our relationships on our networks. Robert, what do you think of transforming a crisis into an opportunity? What were your major shifts in your programs that make you bring new opportunities to your organization?
Excellent, thank you. Some great points actually were brought up there. Hopefully I can add to them a little bit. So let me start with an anecdote, a little story. So we canceled, or postponed, I should say, our event. So then we're left with a hole. And one thing we have as our organization is not only do we have our audiences that are our patron base, but we also have it's not even just members, it's a family. So now that our family can't meet in our house anymore, do we just call it quits? And so that was a question that was on our mind simultaneously, really. And our wonderful artistic director, in conversations with others, posed a question. And that question was, what do I wish choristers knew but don't? And that morphed into a project where we will work on skills for choristers so that when they return to the chorale, they will be better musicians for it. And so I promised a second challenge during the last question. So we're gonna get to what that challenge is. But we, within a week, launched a Zoom, like Virginie was doing very similarly. We essentially launched a music school. We created a program called Canons from Around the World, where we specifically designed to work on solfege and musicianship with our singers. So for those who may not know what that is, it's musical literacy. You know how to read a book. We're teaching you how to read a score, amongst other things. It's actually quite complicated and there's a lot to it, but I'll leave you with that so it doesn't get too complicated. And so over these last, I don't even know, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, there was almost no weeks where we didn't meet as a chorale, as a family. And so over those 7 weeks, however many it is now, we have started to morph what it is. It started as a musicianship venture, and now it's growing towards the original proposition. What do I wish a chorister would know? So it's gone into a much larger, or hopefully larger, project, a choral preparation project, and that's only a working title, but it's that's what we're going for. And I see a crisis having two parts. You have the mitigation phase, which everyone has to go through and everyone has to prepare for. And certain companies need to give a lot of thought to mitigation because they are in financial straits, financial difficulties. And if you need to give a good deal of thought to mitigation, and mitigation means to lessen the effects of. so to lessen the effects of the crisis, then that's exactly what you need to devote your time to, frankly. And if your defenses against crises weren't in place, I would recommend, there's no time like the present to update your responses. But there's a second half to any crisis, and that is the opportunity phase. There's a line from a musical where the character says, and I think it's a very common adage, opportunity is not a lengthy visitor, which I agree with. But I say opportunity is a frequent visitor, and all you have to do is latch onto it and run with it. And I would encourage everyone in the crisis, no matter what organization you're in, is to find the opportunity that is there and leverage it, especially because organizations now might find themselves without things to do. So for us, we were faced with a lot of the other problems. You know, how do we justify running out of money and having to pay people who are doing nothing? To put it very bluntly, of course. So as it developed, it ended up being, well, we're not really mitigating anymore. We are creating a new program, and it is a program that we intend to keep on after the crisis. And even recently, we discussed keeping it on during the fall. If there is no fall season, we will have a fall semester. We're going to still keep meeting. And here's the second challenge. The second challenge has really been engendering, which means creating or establishing, an entrepreneurial mindset within the organization. So mitigation is an important frame of mind to have, but so too, I think, is the opportunity mindset and the entrepreneur mindset. So if you can take this challenge, if it gives you any time, any way to think creatively, I would very much encourage everyone to go and adopt the entrepreneurial mindset.
So, and in these uncertain times, how is this strategic planning from the management point of view in your organizations? Like, how is to plan under uncertainty?
Excellent. Well, that's a great question.
Whoever's.
Well, what I would say for our organization, I always think of, we hear a lot of tools, business plans, which we use, budgets, which we use, matrices, which we may not use or may use. So all these are just tools. They are tools, and what a tool is for us is a way to predict uncertainty. It is a way to frame our thinking. And we used budgets essentially we have a project budget, we have a scenario budget for each different, when we do come back with a concert, we can decide which scenario fits our financial needs the best. And so it's a tool for prediction. We also have a business plan in place that really is geared towards two people, frankly, two groups. A business plan is both externally, people think of it as externally, to communicate to partners, or I should say project plan, to communicate to partners, which absolutely is what it is. But equally and fundamentally, it is to structure your own thought so that your plan will be more well laid out. And so it's that reason that it communicates with external partners. So that's a very important part. And I've lost my train of thought, my apologies, but it's been for me, entrepreneurship is very similar to creativity, and it's very similar to what I think a lot of people, not only in crises, but in general, need to adopt, is how to change their mindset, or how to know when they need to change their mindset. So I'll be frank, one of my preferred tools, not only in management, but in life, and I think it's invaluable to a manager, to one who wants to be a successful manager, and to a unique manager, is to ask questions and create a creative mindset. Ask yourselves. So I have two basic questions, and my questions are, and I'll end with this: is X true? Is it true that the sky is blue? And then I do the opposite. It's the same question, but it'll change your mindset.
Does anyone wants to ask to add something behind the strategic planning that is bringing you in this moment from your management point of view?
I just wanted to emphasize something that Robert said earlier in this discussion, which is the scenario planning. It's something I didn't realize that's a lot of what my team has been doing. But something that we've been doing differently that I think is of value is to, again, change our frame of reference. And instead of being reactionary, to take some ownership and some control back from an uncertain situation. So a lot of our planning and our scenario building has been less like this scenario or this scenario. It's been, we need to make X decision by X date, and we will make it regardless of where, like if we don't have any more information, then we'll make it based off of what we have. And starting to lay it out where instead of it just being a bunch of different strategies, they're starting to connect, and it's a fork in the road, and that they have dates attached to them, so that we're still responding to the world around us, but we're taking control and ownership of the things, of our actions as an organization.
That's a great point. Can I jump in here quickly?
Yep.
I just want to, Charlie, you mentioned something when you spoke earlier, and it kind of rushed back into my mind, and that is flexibility. You said that flexibility was important in your organization to maintain, and I agree with that 100%. So one of the advantages of our program that we're implementing is it's flexible, and the reason flexibility is really important, and not just small. I know I'm speaking from a small organization. This is true in a very large organization too. Is it allows you to adapt really, really quickly. And so for us, we have different phases and different iterations. So after 2 months' time, we completely transform the program if we need to grow. And that is just, in a time of uncertainty, it's just so valuable because it means that you can respond very quickly. And I think that in any organization or in any plan, that being able to respond quickly is something that managers should ask themselves. How can I make this plan more flexible? And I would encourage you to do so.
I think also one thing that I didn't hear so far is that it's very important to keep talking to the other actors in your sector. So I would say, like, for example, in performing arts, like keep a dialogue open with the agents and with the artists or the companies. And for example, me for the film festival, well, I keep in touch with the distributors and the producers to know what's going on for them, because release dates have changed. Like a movie was supposed to come out in April, it's not anymore. It might be in September. So you all have to, keep talking to people and keep exchanging with them, because if you're just looking inside your company, you might be losing sight of some things that are going on around you. And especially, well, I mean, in all sectors, but like I said, in music school, it's a little bit more independent, but we still looked at what other music schools were doing to see like, oh, well, pretty much everybody is doing this. We should, we should be competitive and do that as well, or try to do something as well. Might not be the same thing, but at least stay there and do something. So be in touch with people to know what they're doing, and also to know how you can adapt better with them, because we're never working alone. We're always working with artists, with agents, with distributors, with, whoever, independent contractors, and so on. And so that's very important for me. And also, one thing that I wanted to say is that regarding communication, in my organization, at first, all questions we would have from clients or partners, they would all go to the marketing departments. So I would not answer question. I would send the email to the marketing team, and they would answer, and they would answer always the same kind of email to everybody. So it would be very like mainstream. And then at some point, after like 3 weeks or so, when we knew better what was going on, then it went back to the managing team to answer for their own programs. But it would be like, for example, for the film festival or for the music show, it would be only me. So people would forward me questions, but at least I could answer to the clients that, the clients, they know me, so they're more comfortable asking me questions than asking some person at marketing that they never talked to before. And so we have put this tool that every time we have a question from a client or either an email, a phone call, or any way they contact us, we write down in this kind of big master Excel sheet that is online and shared with everybody the number of emails we had, what was the question about, and what we answered, like keywords. And this way, at the end of this crisis, we will know, well, we had like 10 questions about this memo we sent people. Maybe it wasn't clear enough. Let's go back and see what we could have done better. Oh, like we had no question at all about this. Apparently it was well received or it was clear enough. And so by the end of this, not just communicating with people is important, but seeing how we communicate and to assess, like, is what I was doing best practice or not? I can't know right now because we're still in the mid of it all. But in 6 months or in a year from now, when we reflect about that, we can know, but only if there's some tools that we put together right now to have this kind of overview of what we do and how we respond to everything.
That's really an excellent, I just have to underline that point, Virginie, and that's an excellent tool. Communication in a time of when everything's moving fast, like my speaking voice, when everything's moving fast and when uncertainty is coming in everywhere, to keep from being one step behind, communication is just critical. I just want to underline that point.
I also would like to underline what Virginie said about specifically, like, implementing these evaluation tools is important, but for my own personal frame of mind during all of this, I've been listening to a lot of work by Dr. Brené Brown, and just how to keep my mind healthy. And I think it's important with what Virginie's saying is we're not going to know what the best practice is, and we're going to make mistakes as managers and leaders, and we need to be kind to ourselves, but we also need to not freeze up and let indecision win. Make a decision. Set up those evaluative processes so that later we can reflect and go, that wasn't the right decision because this, not I messed up and I don't know what I messed up. It's a learning opportunity, and hopefully the world doesn't have to repeat this level of crisis, but we can learn something from how we all respond if we document and keep those evaluative processes.
And that's that highlights another point, Charlie, that I think is really interesting as well. And I remember reading something about how, I think it was Google who did it, and it said, that failure was okay if you learned from it. So I think I love you about the making a decision, I call them trigger mechanisms. So what point not only do we have to make the decision, but what criteria do we base them on? And so if you have any project that you find that fails, I'm putting quotes, fails, it won't be a failure as long as you try to learn from it. So I think this is an incredible learning experience as well for organizations to make them stronger. Come 1 year's time from now, April 2021, try doing or even in your personal life, do a review, do a post-mortem, and then see how you became better.
I know that a lot of writing, like if anyone's interested in that topic that Robert and I are kind of loosely talking about, the buzzword is usually fail forward.
Mm.
So it's an easy way to find a lot of more eloquent writing on this subject is fail forward.
In the long term, like, we are facing like a new digital reality now, and then post-COVID we might face different things, and things are changing. So how are you thinking in your organizations, how in the long term become sustainable with this new type of projects and ideas, new digital things that you're facing, these all uncertainty, how you are thinking your organizations in your long term to do these sustainable projects?
That's an excellent question. Do either of you want to take it first, or do you want me to take a crack at it?
I'm still trying to, I saw it in the chat, and I'm still trying to really pick it apart.
Okay. I mean, all right, so I'll take a little crack at that. I mean, from what you're saying, Monica, it's an excellent question. It's an excellent question. And I've kind of dived a little bit more into digital myself, and it's a big field. Frankly, it is a very big field. And a lot of it, I'm going to be frank, I feel is beyond a lot of what especially smaller arts organizations can implement. I did work on a project once that dealt with immersive and interactive technology, and it's not easy per se. It's special. It can take a lot of time, a lot of expertise, and a lot of money to put it in. And it can also most difficultly be a distraction instead of an asset. And that really is a problem, because you end up expending so much energy and resources on technology or digital implementations that it can be tough and it's become a detriment to the organization rather than an asset. So in implementing it, you really want it to be an asset. But there are certain things an arts organization can and should do of any size right now that would really help. And one thing that I would encourage, and one thing that we're looking always to do, is to make sure our information assets are in order. So this really points to a database. This is good for marketing, it's good for development, it's good for programming and tracking. It just means that you are able to keep your information in a way that is really easily accessible, and you really can use it in creative ways. So I'd make sure that that your database infrastructure is there. If you have time in this crisis, database right there. And other digital, Zoom, I don't think it'll replace the office. Certainly, I think there's such a value in meeting people face to face, at least initially. But it's a really great. But Zoom could definitely be incorporated, either this or another online format. And I think that'll be, and also working together like on servers. I think that's a great thing any arts organization can work on, and in implementing manageable technology within the organization.
I think that's incredibly well put, Brian or Robert. So I'm going to just add an anecdote to that. What my organization has been doing that kind of ties in where we were talking about strategy earlier, and what Robert's talking about here with not investing, or technology is expensive and it might not be financially sustainable in the long term. So what Theater 3 has done is we invested a small amount of money into some technology, and looking for sustainability, we're trying to find a way to provide a digital experience that is unique or fulfilling in a way that is different than a live performance, but kind of harkens to that same feeling. And rather than trying to jump immediately to that as a mid-sized organization, we acquired the technology, and this evening we have a free live stream of a reading of a new play that we plan to moderate and have a discussion and talk about the process of writing a new play. But it's a way for us to, rather than just having a Zoom meeting, making it a little more theatrical or a little more dramatic, because that's an opportunity for our next production that maybe that we can command a ticket price. It may not be what our ticket price was for live performance, but it is a way for us to develop a unique offer that potentially can generate some revenue. Because that's, to answer the sustainability and the long-term strategy that is in that question, is finding ways to mitigate cost, to lessen the need for cash, but also to find that revenue source that is different.
And what do you think about, Virgingo?
Yeah, I'll just add something. I don't want to say boring, but we did invest also money in an online platform, like a professional online platform, so we would keep a presence and so on. But I think one thing that changed in the long-term planning is that so our financial year ends in March, and so we already had a budget done for 2020 and 2021. And now that all of that is happening, well, let's say for the performing arts venue, we have a 500 seats performing arts venue. There is, I mean, realistically, no way 500 people will be there in September, either because we won't have that, either because they'll still be shy about going to the theater or in a really big environment like that. Either because governments will say no, it's max like 100 people or 250 people, and so we definitely have to think with those scenarios in mind that our budgeting will have to change, and so we have to redo the entire budget to think that we're going to have less revenues. And so, I mean, I don't want to say it sounds depressing, but we will have to do less shows or less events that we were planning to do just because we won't have the same amount of revenue. So there's no perfect solution. We just have to account for it and budget for it. The fact that we won't have in September 500 people in our venue, that won't happen. And so, yeah, we definitely have to think about that and maybe think about downsizing a little bit what we're doing. And downsizing does not mean that we're failing. It just means that we're adapting to the situation right now. And we have to, I think it's a little bit hard to think in our mind that if we're not sold out, we're like failing at what we do if we only have 200 people. But I mean, I think that in the situation right now, if we can get 200 people in September to be in an arts venue, like that's incredible, right? And so, yeah, I think there's all of that of just not saying like, okay, we have to downsize. And I think a lot of people will have to downsize in some way. Even if you have an online presence, it's not the same as having a show in your venue, and to think that it's not the end of the world and that it's, you're still there and you're still going on.
I think I want to just go with this. Like, all of us are naming very difficult moments, but I think it's important to do this question. What's the value that arts and cultural organizations provide? Why it's important to keep on going? And I think, Charlie, if you could answer this.
Yes. So this is something that Monica and I have been talking about offline a good bit, and it's something that I think is really important. Historically, cultures all over the world, and going back tens, hundreds of thousands of years, human beings historically valued art and culture before medicine, specifically storytelling, music, painting, like making things beautiful mattered to human beings long before finding ways to, you know, earlier than germ theory and things like that. And while doctors and scientists are doing this amazing work that I don't want to discourage, like it is phenomenal work to cure the ill and to mitigate the spread of this virus, that's only helping this many people, right? How many people are actually in a hospital or actually are that ill compared to the billions of people who are suffering indirectly from this virus? And what is interesting, what I think answers that question of why human beings valued art and culture before science and medicine is answered in our response. The billions of people who are suffering are turning to arts and culture to heal their souls, to fill their day, to make themselves feel comforted in a way that science can't right now. It's not, for those of us that aren't ill, there isn't comfort in the science right now. There's comfort in art. and beauty and music and stories. So I think that's the critical thing that arts and culture organizations are providing and should be providing to people.
That's actually a great point. So we've been in our organization, from external partners, actually, I'll say that they are the ones who informed us. But to think of, in a crisis, you have the first line responders, which would be hospitals, food banks, those who are responding to a very urgent need. But then you have what are called comfort organizations, and the need is still there, and the response that we are offering people, some of whom are sick, some initiatives amongst our friends and family in the chorus have been to make people in hospitals feel better through the effective music. But from a larger standpoint, the music and artwork and culture, I think, feeds a different part and fulfills a need that is comfort. And it might not be, so we're hesitant to ask directly we don't want to be in conflict with the first responders, but we definitely see ourselves as a comfort organization, and one that does have a place in helping to respond to the pandemic and to the crisis that's going on.
Okay. We have 15 minutes, so we have some questions from the audience. So I want to ask the first one we received is, how have you best promoted your programs now that you can go online? How are you involving global targets? Does anyone want
I'll answer that. I'll start. Well, so it's an interesting point, because we are in a somewhat unique situation about having our audience being mostly an internal one. We're really marketing to our friends and family. So the first thing I would say, to generalize it to those who are not in our circumstance, is know who you're targeting, because that will determine what online tools you use. We use Zoom. We contact with a lot of our members, our patrons, our donors. So we contact with them tonight. Actually, I'll be facilitating a rehearsal tonight. My artistic director will be the one leading it. And then after that, we're looking to use network marketing, so really personal touches. My concern with a lot of online marketing, frankly, is that there's a lot of noise in the marketplace right now. From a marketing perspective, there are a lot of activities, a lot of things are going on Instagram Live, just a lot of noise. And one thing that, when we think of the energies of our organization, we have to ask ourselves, how much is our voice going to break through on these online mediums? And internally is the most powerful tool that we have used. So Zoom essentially is what we use. And but the question still starts with who is your audience for your program?
Yeah, I think that's important. And Virginia, do you want to add something, or I'll go with the other one question?
No, because in my organization, we really are centered about, on our community locally. So it's not, we don't really apply, we don't really look for other markets or anything like that. So.
Okay, we have one related to an older demographic. It says, our demographic is older, so they don't have as solid of a grasp on technology as younger constituents. So how have you been handling the technology gap to maintain connection with all of your patrons?
So I am right there with you, with a predominantly older audience, and also with this pandemic that targets older people. It's a long-term strategy as well. So part of what we've done is as we've been implementing smaller projects, we are trying to familiarize them incrementally, rather than, oh, you paid for this ticket, here's this very complex way to receive it. So the first thing we did is we offered a stream of some archival footage, and that was sent with a direct link to a static page that was live for a window of time. So they understood that, oh, if I follow my email, and most of us understand email regardless of age. So that was one way. And then with our strategy for this evening, it's a free event, so we plan to stream it on Facebook Live. So it's a way to encourage some of those older patrons to try something different. And the nice part about Facebook Live is that you don't have to be a member of Facebook. They don't have to set up an account to view the stream, which allows them to try a new form of technology that they may not have otherwise tried. So I think part of it's incremental and not just throwing your patrons into a very complex system, but finding a way to simplify and guide them through it.
Yeah, I think that's a challenge for all of us and the new technologies we're getting in. We have another question that says, are you thinking of new partnerships or income streams to monetize digital content?
I guess I'll answer that question. It's a very interesting one. And actually it was something I wanted to bring up earlier as a coda to Charlie's comment. And that is, if you do want to approach a new venture, especially with technology, something that's out of your knowledge base, a partnership is just invaluable because there are people who specialize in that. So personally for us, that's a very interesting question. No, I don't, we're pursuing a lot of it, not necessarily independently, but our partners are our fellow chorales and our fellow singers. I forgot the exact statistic, but I believe there's a very high number of persons in Connecticut at least, but also probably throughout the United States and Canada and the world, that participate in music or that participate in a cultural life, sing in choruses. So those are our partners now.
Something that we're looking at, the sticking point, I'm gonna just put this out there because I'm sure many of us are thinking of it. We're all looking at our financial realities. So making it lucrative and having a partnership can be sticky because you're now having to negotiate how that revenue is split. Very few collaborations are going to work on someone doing a lot of work for no return. But what we've found more and more is within our team's personal network. For example, our artistic director has done a lot of broadcast work. And so he knows several editors and film people that are interested. It doesn't mean that it's financially feasible, but we are investigating partnerships with corporate broadcasting people to help us with the technology. But that conversation is just now getting to, well, what does that cost us? And would we be able to recoup that cost? So partnerships are invaluable, but they're mainly based on people. It's about your network and who you can access and want to access.
I think the type of product you have will also impact the kind of online presence you can have. So let's say for us, for performing arts, they're quite expensive to put in place and live stream for free or for not like a smaller fee. It can cost like thousands of dollars to have a show running just once, right? As for the film festivals or for movies I present, it's really not the same. Like a license for a presentation or a projection is somewhere around $150 and like top 300 or something. So that's way easier to get to a number of people with a cheap like $3 or $5 tickets that they would be willing to pay for an online offer. And of course you can have a lot of people and you can market them to a lot of people around either your country or your region to assist to this, and then you can have more people assisting than you would have in person. And so I think it's a matter of finding the right price for the kind of offer that you have.
That's actually, if I might jump in just at the end. So one of the things I'm most proud about my organization as they've gone through this crisis is that we have launched a new program, and I think that's been great. As we're looking for partnerships, one of the things we're using is YouTube to put our rehearsals on. And so there are free partnerships and there are monetizable partnerships too, like YouTube. But resources aren't exclusively money. And a lot of choices in terms of technology implementation is time and effort. And if especially in a mitigation, if you need to reduce your staff, then that it's not impossible. Don't always try, but it may not be it might not be successful. We'll see, but do try.
We have this question that says, has this exceptional situation let emerge new elements of your collaborators in terms of panic, proactivity, flexibility, stress tolerance, creative response, ability to sympathize? Will these new elements be useful when assigning future projects?
I can speak to that a little bit. What we've seemed to focus on a little bit came from some reading I had done with a professor at SMU here in Dallas from the RAND group. So when we look at the value of the arts, there's Gifts of the Muse is a wonderful literature review if anyone has time to read it. But it breaks down what is important, like what the perceived value is for an individual consuming the arts, and it actually answers most of this with stress reduction, emotional intelligence, but it also builds a sense of community and can do so across socioeconomic, racial, and even geographical barriers. And in the case of music, even language barriers, that we all respond to music kind of universally and not without language. But I do think that for organizations, the opportunity here is participation, because what that literature proves is that what makes a patron of the arts is participation. Like, that's, someone doesn't understand the value of music until they've attempted to make music. Someone doesn't understand the value of art and drawing until they've attempted to draw. Someone doesn't understand the value of theater until they've tried to speak or tell a story in front of an audience and practice. Like, practitionership leads to patronage over time. So the opportunity for us is for us to do more education and to do more outreach so that we can build a stronger connection with our patrons.
Very good. Does anyone wants to add in this question? Okay, so I think we have 2 minutes to close. So thank you all for this amazing conversation. I think it has been very valuable from the management point of view, from the artistic point of view, of understanding how arts and culture are very important, although it's a very difficult moment for all of our organizations, and even more in our Latin American context. So thank you for the Master of Management in International Arts Management, and for our audience, that I know there are a lot of alumni here joining us today. We are leaving the contact of the program because we would have some more digital series with different guests from the master, from other experts, and from our network. We are a very big network, and we will start inviting academics, and this was just our first digital series. So hope it has been we have shared some interesting ideas and experiences for you all. I know we have amazing organizations to connected today. So see you in the next session. We would start posting this information in the Instagram of a CAR digital series, and also in the webpage. So I don't know if I'm gonna see if there's any additional question. Just to close.
Oh, I do want to say something at.
And if you want to close something, yeah, go.
Well, I don't want to speak for everyone, but if you do want to reach out, our information is in the slide presentation, and you feel free to reach out to either email, or LinkedIn's always a good one, or Messenger, that's always good. But you can reach out if you want to discuss more.
Absolutely.
So, okay, thank you all. Thank you for joining us today. I'm seeing, no, there are no more questions. So see you next time, and thank you, Miams. It's always great to see you back, because I know all of them. So it's amazing now that we are all facing these new challenges, and for sure we would have new interesting ideas to bring to the table. So thank you very much and see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you all.
Technology, how do I close this? Final. Okay, bye.